Hey everybody, Shoebox Legends here, back with a special episode that comes sort of by request. And the backstory here, a long while back, in the early days of the channel, I had done a video, and I don't even remember at this point what the content was of that particular video, but got a comment from my hobby buddy and the well-known Pepino Man, indicating that he would love to know who the career penalty minute leaders are for the NHL. And so decided to spend a little time, you ask and you shall receive, Pepino Man. Spent a little time looking into the top 5 career penalty minute leaders, and then acquired a couple of cards that I needed to kind of fill in. Wanted to choose some appropriate cards to show off as we covered these 5 bruisers and enforcers here today in this video. And because I'm super analog here on the channel and don't do any sort of video editing or anything, I'm very much a one-take channel. Have some note cards here that I've made to kind of walk us through the countdown. I think my drawing, this was supposed to be boxing gloves, but it looks a little bit more like snow mittens, but all good. So we're going to talk through the top 5 career penalty minute leaders in the history of the NHL, and we'll work our way backwards from number 5 to number 1. And in the number 5 spot, we have a guy who is known as a bruiser and a fighter throughout the 80s and 90s, primarily for the Detroit Red Wings, Mr. Bob Probert. And I thought, looking through all the Probert cards that I owned, this was an obvious one to choose for this video because of that big, nasty black eye and stitches that he's sporting there. This is, in my opinion, the perfect Bob Probert card. And if we remove this little header card, we can see that Bob comes in at number 5 on the all-time career penalty minutes leaderboard with no less than 3,300 penalty minutes. So that is an impressive tally. He was a known fighter who got into some altercations with some of the other names, actually, that we're going to see on this list. He was sort of viewed as like the protector of Steve Yzerman during his time in Detroit. So, the way hockey worked back in the day, it was a very different game back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. For those of you who don't know, much more fighting, much more nasty stuff going on the ice than you get present day. And so a lot of teams would want to have a Bob Probert type guy on the roster as a deterrent to other teams messing with their star players. So you knew, if you were facing the Detroit Red Wings and you saw Steve Yzerman heading into the corner to get a puck, if you delivered a crushing hit to him, you were going to have to deal with Bob Probert before the end of the game. And that was not a situation that you wanted to find yourself in. So he was very much a deterrent, as a lot of the enforcers were back in the day. Bob was a bit of a wild child. I'm going to try to tell some anecdotes about some of these guys that are, sort of amusing, although obviously some of these are very serious issues, so I don't mean to poke fun at them or anything like that. But he had some drug problems. He was actually caught with some cocaine in his underwear when crossing the border in the late 80s as a player, and was, I believe, suspended for quite a while from the NHL. Eventually got back in, had some issues later in his life with some legal altercations and police involvement related to drugs, and then sadly, I think unrelated, but passed away in 2010 from a heart attack at a very relatively young age. So sad to see him go in that way, but he certainly provided NHL fans with a lot of bruising memories and memorable fights throughout his career. So in the number 5 spot, again, Mr. Bob Probert. The number 4 player on today's countdown for career penalty minute leaders racked up 3,381 penalty minutes. So finished just a hair above Mr. Probert on the career penalty minute tally. And it is none other than Marty McSorley, who I recall from being a kid as basically Gretzky's enforcer. So, in the same way that Bob Probert was there to protect Steve Yzerman and be a deterrent to messing with him, Marty McSorley very much filled that role for Wayne Gretzky, both on the Edmonton Oilers and then later with the Los Angeles Kings. I chose this 91-92 upper deck because this is a great shot of Marty probably accumulating some of the penalty minutes that are represented on that note card right there. So he was just a a rough guy. He was able to play at various points in his career, both offense and defense, which is impressive at the NHL level. I guess really the most notable sort of story that I could tell about him is his career ended pretty abruptly in 2000 when he assaulted a player with his stick on the ice. Pretty ugly incident that resulted in his suspension and then subsequent retirement. So he definitely went out the same way that he was known to play throughout his career. So pretty tough customer that you wouldn't want to interact with. Number 4 on today's countdown, Marty McSorley. Moving up into the number 3 slot, our number 3 player had a pretty significant jump, finished their career with 3,515 penalty minutes. And this gentleman is Domi. So went ahead. This was one of the reasons it took me a while to produce this video. I wasn't really satisfied with I had a lot of Domi cards, but wasn't satisfied that any of them sort of kind of worked for the vibe of this video. So I settled on this one with a nice mean scowl. Picked this up off of ComC and had to wait for this to arrive in order to show it here and compile the list. I just thought this was a much more fitting shot of Domi, and this is how I remember him as a hockey fan throughout the 90s. He was absolutely known as a fighter, maybe more so than any of the other 4 guys in today's video. In fact, he is the all-time leader in NHL history for fighting majors. And this sounds made up if you are a fan of the game this day and age, but I swear this is the actual number. He received no fewer than 333 fighting majors during his NHL career. When you think about getting in 333 fistfights with other athletes at the NHL level, that is just insane. We will never see that topped. Fighting has really been deprecated quite a bit in today's game. It is rarer than ever to see a fight now, and probably for the better. I get that, but so that really makes Ty's record of 333 fighting majors something that I don't think will ever be approached again. I don't think the league would allow that, quite honestly. He did score 100 goals in his career, so he could put the puck in the net. And in fact, his son Max is a current NHL player as well. And a funny story that I have to tell about Domi, back in the early 2000s, there was a situation where he actually punched a fan a few times because he was in the penalty box. I believe this was in Philadelphia, and a Flyers fan was kind of heckling him, giving some crap to him, climbing up the glass behind him and taunting him. And unfortunately for that fan, the glass gave way and they fell into the penalty box. And Ty pounced on that opportunity. Instead of helping the fan to his feet and making sure he was okay, he decided to start pummeling him until the referees and scorekeepers got involved and pulled him off. So so far as I know, he's the only one of the 5 players we're going to look at today who actually punched a fan during gameplay. So congratulations, Ty, for that. In the number 2 spot, with 3,565 career penalty minutes, we have Dale Hunter. Largely remembered for his time with the Washington Capitals, who he would later actually be the head coach of. He was actually a very successful player. He came from a hockey family. His brothers, Dave and Mark, also played at the NHL level. He has the distinction of having the most penalty minutes career in the playoffs. So he's the most bruising enforcer as far as postseason play goes, which is something to be said, in addition to being number 2 for regular season penalty minutes, as we can see here on the note card. I would say out of the 5 players in today's list, he was the most legitimately talented NHL player. In addition to racking up the penalty minutes, he also scored 320 career goals and is one of a select group of players who is not in the Hall of Fame, but still accumulated 1,000 career points. So, as far as non-enforcing, just, athletic skill and being a good hockey player with a high offensive upside, I think Dale Hunter is the guy off of this list of 5. His number was retired by the Washington Capitals, and when they did that, the gift that they presented him with was an actual penalty box from the arena. So I think that tells you all you need to know about Dale. But again, very successful player in addition to being a bruiser and a fighter. And wanted to get his tough customers insert here for the video. I thought that was fitting. Couldn't find a card of Dale where he's throwing any punches or sporting a black eye or anything like that. But obviously an entire set that's based on tough customers and fighters I thought was fitting. And without further ado, the all-time leader in career penalty minutes in the NHL, as I lose my note card here, at an astounding 3,971 career minutes spent in the sin bin. It is Tiger Williams, Dave Williams, affectionately known as Tiger. You can't tell that looking at the front of this card because Topps, unfortunately, did this stupid scratch-off design in the 1980 Topps release. But I wanted to go with this card nonetheless because he's rocking a nice black eye. So I thought this was a very fitting card to sort of commemorate Williams' career. He briefly played for the Hartford Whalers at the tail end of his career just before retirement. And, he finished a good 400 plus penalty minutes above the next closest guy on the list here. Much like Wayne Gretzky's career point scoring record will never be topped, I am 100% confident that there will never be a player who records more than 3,971 career penalty minutes. And as proof of that, the current active leader for career penalty minutes is Zdeno Chara, and he has just a hair over 2,000 penalty minutes. So the guy in the league right now with the most penalty minutes in his career, who's, obviously going to retire probably after this season, doesn't have very long left in the tank, has about half as many penalty minutes as Tiger Williams accumulated during his NHL career. And after Chara, the next highest active player is Joe Thornton, who has like 1,200 and change. So, there's really no one in the league, and there never will be again, that really even approaches any of these guys in terms of, these career accolades, and if you want to call them that, for career penalty minutes. So I'm pretty confident that these top 5 that we looked at today are going to remain the top 5, probably for good. These guys are pretty well cemented in the record books. And as much as I poked fun at them, these guys are to be applauded to an extent as well. While they're known for fighting and, questionable behavior on the ice and suspensions and off-ice issues and things like that, the reality is you don't get to play at the NHL level even back then unless you are a supremely talented hockey player. So for these guys to make it, on the world's biggest stage, enforcer or not, it really says something about their ability to play the game. And I think, in a lot of these cases, this is just what the league was back then. Enforcers and defenders were just part of the game. And with a lot of these guys, they probably came to the realization early on in their career that maybe they just didn't quite have the skill, with the exception of Dale Hunter, to make a lengthy career at the NHL level as pure, wingers and scorers. But if they're willing to adapt their game and drop the gloves every so often, they could kind of hang on and make a career out of it. And I know for at least some of these guys, that they felt like that was their only way to stay involved in the game. So I don't fault these guys for being bruisers or, having questionable track records or spending a lot of time in the sin bin. I just think it was a different era in the NHL, and it's what these gentlemen needed to do to fill a role that the team needed and to extend their careers and survive in the league. So my hats are off to these 5 gentlemen, and appreciate Pepino, you giving me the motivation to get this grouping of cards together and create this video. And that is a wrap on our top 5 career penalty minute leaders. Would love to hear from you in the comments below. If you are maybe not a hockey fan, but you found this sort of video entertaining or would like to see some more of this, let me know, and I'll try to compile some more episodes like this. But either way, this was a fun exercise inspired by Pepino, and hope a few of you enjoyed it. So I will certainly be back in the near future with some more sports card content. Until then, keep enjoying the hobby, everybody.